This is your read aloud portion of CKLA for today. So we are going to do mirror words, vocabulary, boisterous. Look at the parts in that word. Boisterous, bountiful, elaborate, inhabitant, ritual, worship. Boisterous means very noisy, lively, and active. Mirror words. Bountiful, plentiful, having an abundance of something. Elaborate, made of many carefully placed or arranged pieces or parts. Highly detailed. Inhabitant, a person or animal who lives in a specific place or habitat. Ritual, important ceremony that is part of specific cultures and traditions. Worship, show respect and love to a god or person. You remember what we read in yesterday's lesson? What is a legend? Today you're going to hear about another type of fiction called a myth. Have you heard of a myth? What do you think between a legend and a myth? In a legend, there are real events or people in history. The story can be exaggerated, made a little larger than life. Parts cannot be proven to be true. However, in a myth, stories are associated with beliefs of a group. They explain why people act a certain way, how things came to be, or how things happen in nature. Remember in the legend of Romulus and Remus, we heard about two Roman gods, Mars and Tiberius. Mars is the god of war, and Tiberius is the god of the Tiber River. We consider myths of gods and goddesses to be fictional today, but many ancient write that gods and goddesses were real, and they worshiped them as a part of their religion. Ancient Romans believed the gods and goddesses had supernatural powers or skills and were immortal or able to live forever. Many of the gods and goddesses the ancient Romans believed in were similar to those of the ancient Greeks. Mirror words. Polytheistic. People or cultures who believe in many different gods or goddesses are called polytheistic. The prefix poly means many, and the suffix theistic means having to do with a god. Repeat the word polytheistic after me. Polytheistic. Many Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans were polytheistic because they believed in and worshiped many gods and goddesses. Today, we're going to learn about some additional gods and goddesses, along with Roman life and beliefs. During this read aloud, you should add additional information to activity page 3.1 on gods and goddesses. You will be able to think about key ideas about the Roman life and beliefs. So get out your workbook, activity page 3.1. To understand Roman beliefs and religion, let us first think about some of the early inhabitants of what we now call Italy, the people who lived there and whose children and grandchildren would later be called citizens of Rome. Back then, before Rome was a powerful city, most people in the area, such as the Etruscans and the Greeks, were farmers. In ancient times, people had very little scientific understanding about weather and climate patterns. They did not have a scientific explanation for why the seasons change, or even why the day turns to night. All people knew was that they had to survive in a challenging and dangerous world in which anything could happen. Floods, droughts, diseases, and plagues of insects, just to name a few. Sometimes things were just fine and farmers could enjoy great bountiful harvests. Other times, it rained just enough for the farmers to harvest the amount of food that they needed. Working the fields all day, an ancient farmer must have had time to think and ask questions about why things were the way they were. For example, why does it rain some years and not others? Why are my sheep healthy while my neighbor's flock of sheep became sick and died? Why did a flood come and wash away all my crops last year? An ancient Roman farmer would have believed in a god named Saturn, who was, according to the myth, the god of the harvest, who existed before all the other gods. Whether the harvest was good or bad, the Roman farmer believed that Saturn had something to do with it. If the harvest was bad, then that meant Saturn was mad. If the harvest was bountiful, then that meant Saturn was happy. This painting shows a statue of Saturn holding a scythe, in one hand, a tool which is used by farmers to cut wheat. Ancient Romans tried to keep Saturn and other gods they believed happy. Romans participated in the yearly Saturnalia festival in late December to honor Saturn. This was a time of boisterous celebration with singing and dancing and feasting all day and night. Somewhere nearby, there might have been an elaborate temple for Saturn. A temple is a type of religious building in which people worship a god. This picture shows a well-preserved temple that was built by the Romans in what is now the country of France. This temple gives you a good idea of what a temple built to worship a Roman god looked like. Inside the temple, there would have been a statue of the Roman god and an altar or special table where gifts could be left for the god. Priests were often dedicated to a particular god. Priests dedicated to Saturn lived in his temple and performed rituals to please him. They made offerings to Saturn, sometimes sacrificing a lamb or delivering some other food to the temple, to thank him for helping with the harvest. Agriculture was not the only thing for which the Romans had a god. In fact, some ancient Romans believed the world was ruled by many gods, each of which played a special role in keeping order in the world. Romans were not alone in believing that there were many gods. Such beliefs were common throughout the world at the time. As you heard earlier, the Romans had similar ideas about gods and goddesses as the Greeks and other neighbors in the Mediterranean region. East of the area that is now the country of Italy, there's another area that juts out into the Mediterranean Sea. This is now known as the country of Greece. If you compare Greek and Roman culture, you will find many similarities. In ancient days, it was easier to travel by boat than by land between the area where Italy and Greece are today. Both of these countries are separated by a fairly narrow body of water that is dotted with dozens of large, small islands. Ancient peoples of Greece and Rome often came into contact with each other on those islands or on one another's coastlines as people searched for new places to settle. This close contact brought lots of trade between people, including the blending and exchanging of ideas and beliefs. Many Romans had heard of Zeus, the king of the Greek gods, who believed to rule over a collection of gods, including Aphrodite, the goddess of love, Apollo, the god of the sun, music, healing, and knowledge, Ares, the god of war, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom and understanding. Greeks went to Athena's temple and worshipped her when they needed help through tough problems. She was also considered to be the goddess of war, which is why she had a spear and a helmet. The Romans also believed in and worshipped many of the same types of gods and goddesses that the Greeks believed in, although the Romans had different names for most of them because they had a different language. Some historians would say that the Romans borrowed these gods and goddesses from the Greeks, although the idea of many of these deities may have already existed before the Greeks and Romans would have encountered each other. The Greek goddess of wisdom, Athena, was similar to the Roman goddess Minerva. The Greek king god of the gods was named Zeus. The Romans called their king of the gods Jupiter. Instead of the Greek name Ares, the Roman god of war was called Mars. Instead of the Greek name Aphrodite, the goddess of love was called Venus. Like the Greeks, the Romans believed that some of the gods and goddesses lived in a palace on the very top of Mount Olympus in Greece. These beings were known as the Olympian gods. What is a myth? Are myths facts or fiction? How is a myth different from a legend? What did some inhabitants of Rome and inhabitants of other places that had polytheistic beliefs do to please the gods they believed in? Why were there many farmers in ancient Rome? Why did the ancient Roman farmers want to please Saturn, the god of the harvest? Compare and contrast the culture of ancient Greeks and Romans. Take a look at activity page 3.1 in your workbook and 3.2. You need to please go ahead and complete that now. Thank you, friends.